Alright, so here we are at my video channel, Wanderlust, the search for Forrest Fenn's Gold, or Forrest Fenn's Gold. I watched a couple of my own videos, and I'm definitely cognizant of how I speak, and I noticed that I have a speaking tick, so I'm going to work really hard at not doing that particular speaking tick that I do. I think when I'm trying to make a point, I make that tick, and it's really irritating. It's harder than one appears to be able to speak and think what you're thinking when you're trying to make specific points regarding content. So one of the things I wanted to do is talk about some about solves, about the Rocky Mountains, and weather. It is Today is March 10th, 2019, and it's daylight savings here, at least on the West Coast. I know some states don't have daylight savings. We just had today is spring forward. We moved our clocks ahead. And as most, it's winter is coming to an end and spring is coming, and many searchers, Forrest Fenn searchers for gold, are getting antsy. People have had a lot of time to sit around and think about their solves. And I think that's another point I wanted to make in this video, especially for somebody who's just watching my videos or trying to learn about thrill of the chase. But it's always fun also for people who have been on the chase for a while to talk about the word that's used a lot is solves, or a solve. People have it's used in the Forrest Fenn search is people will have an idea, and so the word solve is used in a way where a searcher is saying, hey, I've worked out the 9 clues in the poem, and I think I know exactly where the treasure chest is hidden, and they will shorten it just by saying it's their solve. One of the things that I think, in regards to the weather, this has been another really tough winter across the Great Plains and the search area of the Rocky Mountains. The temperatures have been extremely cold throughout Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, even parts of northern New Mexico. I mean, the plain states have gotten hit hard. I think it's still really cold this week. And that could be an issue, even for my own boots on the ground. Another That's another term that, if you're new to the chase, maybe if you're not, it's BOTG, or boots on the ground, and that also is a catchword, or a word that searchers in the Forrest Fenn search use. I use it also. Boots on the ground essentially means I'm going to make a trip to this place and actually go there and get out of my car, one hopes, and go see if my solve is correct. Little Some nomenclature there related to the search. Um, One thing that I always think was interesting was that in an interview, Forrest Fenn says that he gives away a clue, and that the original map. Let's see if I can get that to come up here. The original map, the original map that Forrest Fenn, he alludes to the fact that at the top of the map that it was supposed to include the Rocky Mountains, and actually the search area originally did include Idaho, and I'm presuming Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. And he excluded those areas after a couple of people died. And he also gave away, as a clue, he's alluded to it, is, I believe, the 49th parallel cutting off the Rockies. And at one point he says something to the extent of that he's given away a clue. I think another thing too that I wanted to talk about, at least for my trips to do a search that a fair amount of other people have the same issue. If you live in South Carolina or North Carolina, you either have to catch an airline flight to somewhere here like Denver or into Cody, or you're going to have to drive this distance. I mean, if you're from Texas and you're coming up, you're coming from California, coming from Washington State, I mean, any of these, even if you live maybe in Minnesota or Wisconsin, I mean, that is still a good 800 to 1,000 mile drive, or a long flight, or not that long of a flight, but I mean, if you're in New York, Maine, or if you're outside the United States, even Canada, it is quite a haul to get to this area. And once you get to this area, generally speaking, this is what you're looking at. I mean, this is a dramatic picture. It's a nice picture. I think, and I just did my tick again. I keep saying and tipping. I'm trying to stop that. This, I think, is Teton National Forest, but this is an example of when you get out of your car and you sometimes just walk out of a parking lot at a national park or a national forest, this is what you're faced with. How are you going to find a chest that's 10 inches by 10 inches by 5 inches in this uh, massiveness of nature? So that's what a lot of people are, what they're encountering. Another thing, too, is there's a lot of speculation, and we've all heard about that, and I'm going to talk about that in another video. I'm not want to go too far into that, but how far could an 80-year-old man carry a 40 to 50 pound weight and hide it in an afternoon? Now, it all depends on how spry and how healthy that person is. And we're talking about a man, Forrest Fenn, who was pretty agile and involved with archaeological digs and a lot of other aspects where he was fishing and hunting. So, this is an individual who is well versed in wilderness. It's not like he's a noob walking out on a trail. And I think that's a whole different story. But I kind of wanted to talk about that too, and about going back to my other point, which is about the weather, and that it is March 10th, and spring is about 2 weeks away. That I personally start thinking about my trip and where I'm going to go. But I think one of the interesting things that was just brought up recently is having to do with snow, and it's been a just incredibly heavy snow year this across the Rockies. I mean, jumping over to, this is one of my favorite sites to peek at. It's the National Park Service website, and this is one of my favorite places to go for many reasons, not necessarily having to do with the thrill of the chase. Is It is just absolutely amazing, and I keep gravitating to Glacier National Park, and that's what this webcam is. It's a Glacier National Park webcam, and so throughout the season, especially through winter, I will start peeking at these webcams to see. I think it's a good, for me, it's a good barometer of how deep and thick the snow is to date, and it gives me an idea of being able to look right into the Rocky Mountains and see how things are progressing. I always love this shot of this is Apgar Village. It's right at the entrance of the west side of Glacier National Park by Flathead. And as you can see, these little park sitting, these are benches you can actually sit on. I mean, there looks like there's a good 3, maybe 4 feet, but it's slowly melting, and the building is starting to that they sell hot dogs and stuff is starting to become less covered in snow. I think these last two cameras are great too. This is also Glacier National Park, and you can see. I think this is at pretty high elevation. I think this is around 8,000 feet, thereabouts. And this is the top of the pass that you come through at Logan Pass, and you're looking east down the valley. And I've actually seen years before. This is the building, and here's actually the outhouse, the bathrooms, and the parking lot is down here. And then here's the when you go there, there's a display and the hut for the National Park Service employees. And I've actually seen years where this thing was covered with snow. You couldn't even see barely see the chimney. In the outhouse here, you can see the bathrooms are pretty much covered to the roof. So I always use this as a good way of seeing how much snow has melted, and when it starts to get to the point where I can see the parking lot and the house again, that's when I start making plans to head out. I think another thing was so one of the things I was like starting wanted to talk about on this was solves, but also I was talking about the weather because I had seen that on a thread about snow, and holy cow, does other view of Logan Pass looking back up the hill. I mean, the drifts are pretty intense, and there is just a lot of snow up there this year, and that snow is going to melt as spring comes. And I think I saw a bunch of threads and discussions about when that snow melts, it's gonna be there's gonna be a lot of runoff in the rivers and streams. Every year there is, but I think this was a pretty heavy snow load year. I would have to go look up the records and see, is it above normal for this year, or but I think it has been below. It's been a very, very cold winter. That doesn't necessarily translate into more snow. I know somebody made a very good point on a thread about 2 weeks ago where he showed the calculation between when the weather gets colder and snow density. But this definitely shows that there is still a lot of snow on the ground, and all those rivers and creeks, when this stuff melts, it's going to be running fast and hard and cold, ice cold, along all those rivers and creeks. And I'd say if you're going to go out boots on the ground, I'd be very, very careful about those rivers. And here's another shot. I think I love this. This is the east gate of Glacier National Park. I think this there's also a ton of snow on the ground, and usually this entire area, even the town of St. Mary, essentially is abandoned for wintertime. All the locals just pack up and leave because the snow becomes so deep and so intense. So this is a live shot, Sunday, March 10th. You can actually, if you watch on this long enough, you can see it's updated, I think, every 30 or 60 seconds. You can get an idea of what it's like. Looks like a beautiful sunny day, though, out there. And while I'm going on and on about these pictures, which are probably maybe boring, but I think they're great, I was actually wrong. This is the St. Mary Visitor Center webcam. And yeah, there's a fair amount of snow there. It looks like actually it's starting to melt. I think I see grass here. But again, looks like a stunning day to be out there. But it does give me hope that spring is coming, because it does sort of look like this is starting to melt down a little bit, and hopefully by late May, early June, if this is melted down, to me what it means is this is very far north at the Canadian border almost. And if you start seeing the snow melt here, and you can see the grass and the weather, you can see the snow starting to back up the tops of the mountains, you know, retreat up the mountains, then that to me is usually a good sign that if I head south into Wyoming and Colorado, that it's not going to be as harsh. Though there's no guarantee. I mean, you could run into just as bad weather down there. Also, kind of end with the mundane, which is the forest entrance on the west side. It's pretty good snowpack there too. It's got to be at least 4 feet thereabouts. So that wraps up this little rant of a video. There's Forrest Fenn, and I'm out of here. So the please, if you can, like my videos and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try and keep cranking out videos, and hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
So I drink another beer. to show it all away. Oh yeah, we are after beer. I'm still standing here. Hope that the one that my Mary will come.